Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the City Council special meeting this Monday evening, April 21st. I now call this meeting to order. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Certainly, Mayor Newsom. Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Present.
Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky.
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine. Here. And Mayor Newsom.
Here. At this time, I'll ask our city clerk if there are any notifications or requests for virtual meeting participation that have been received from any members of the council due to just cause or emergency circumstances.
There are no requests.
Okay. We're excited to be here live and in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, complete the yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the city clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. I'd like to take a moment to announce our boards and commissions annual recruitment has begun. The city is recruiting for advisory members on all boards and commissions. Apply today and help ensure every voice in our community is heard. The deadline is Friday, May 2nd. Visit cityofsanmateo.org for details. Item 1 on the agenda, General Fund 2526 Operating Budget Overview, presentation by Finance Director Karen Huan. Welcome, Karen. Thanks. Oh, thank you.
Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Today we have 2025-26 budget preview. It have 2 items. I am the first one, covering general funds budget preview, and will follow by CIP budget preview. And the goal of the budget preview is to share the general funds revenue and expenditure projections, some of key economic assumptions, and also steps that staff have taken to address the city's deficit issues and how we plan to support the city's long-term financial sustainability. So let's take a look at the budget timeline. We started the budget kickoff in January 2025, provided a mid-year budget update to the council in February, and we just finished a general fund reserve policy study session on April 7, and that brings us to tonight. So after tonight's budget preview, we'll follow by 2 public hearings, which is scheduled in June. The first one, we are going to bring back the budget, the proposed budget for council review and approval. And then the final budget will be bring back in the last council meeting in June for budget adoption. So let's take a look at our 2025 budget highlight. We prepared the preliminary 2025-26 budget as usual, and our executive team focused on following our council priority and community priorities as closely as we can to prioritize our resources to program and initiative under the council's priority. And we also take a look at our operational needs to make sure the budget cover our operating needs to continue to provide goods and high quality services. The budget also is developed to confirm our council's long-term focuses on the city's long-term financial sustainability and to make sure we have a healthy financial status for the long run. This year's budget development has been challenging. We started with drafting the budget with presentation preparation, and just the last couple of weeks, we have to rewind a lot of them because a lot have happened. Over the last few weeks, we have seen rapid development and changes in the U.S. trade policies, and we also have seen sell-off in stock markets, not just stock market, but also bond market, currency markets. People generally worry. And we can understand there's a lot of uncertainty around us. So when we develop the budget under this backdrop, when we face a lot of uncertainties, how do we navigate through this has been a question on everyone's mind. Based on the latest economic study and forecast that we have seen, most of the forecasters are projecting an economic slowdown in 2025 and 26. The data didn't support a recession yet. The data haven't come in to support that we are in a recession, but the consensus is that we are likely to see an economic slowdown. The new tariffs and trade conflict is going to put pressure on prices. We are likely to see inflation going up. And that's also a general consensus. But to what extent and for how long, and no one knows at the moment. That's the uncertainty that we have to face and continue to monitor where the policy will go, because it changes day by day and sometimes hour by hour. It's really hard to follow. The Federal Reserve have signaled pretty clearly, because they repeatedly come out and say they are going to take a wait-and-see approach for the general economy, wait until clear signal before they decide whether they want to do rate cuts. Some have projected 2 rate cuts in 2025. Some project 1 rate cut, and it's really nobody knows. But the Federal Reserve have been really clear. They don't want to do anything right now. They want to see the data. They're monitoring hard data and soft data until a clear signal before they decide what to do. One of the interesting observations is also the Federal Reserve chairman have said they are actually positioned really well because they can go either way, which means go up or can go down. They have room to do both. That also highlight how much uncertainty that we are facing, because they have to prepare for so many different scenarios, or they have to tackle both. Inflation and potential economic slowdown. They are in a tough spot. So we have also seen that consumer confidence have dropped significantly over the last months, and actually since March, consumer confidence have dropped. Investor and business sentiment also have dropped. It has been difficult for everyone to decide what to do next, including the city. So under that backdrop, the budget development are taking a little different approach this year. We are taking a more conservative approach when we develop the budget, and also at a time like this, we decided that the best course of action actually is go back to our fundamental and look at our core revenue and see our core financial status, see where we are. And also keep an eye on long term instead of just reacting to short-term reaction. Because a good financial strategy should lead the city to long-term financial health, and a good organization always build with the kind of structure to weather any kind of weather, whether it's sunny, rainy, or cloudy, or stormy days. So back to the fundamental, what's that mean? Let's first take a look at the general fund's revenue base. The general fund revenue have many layers, but if you group them into 2 categories, one is the tax revenue that we rely on, the other is the rest. And the tax revenue, it accounts for 80% of our total general fund revenue. That's significant. And what is inside the tax revenue? Let's take a look at it. Majority of the tax revenue actually is contributed by property tax. Property tax, sales tax, and real property transfer tax are the top three revenues. Combine the three, they account for 90% of the total tax revenue. So as you look at this structure, what I have in mind as a financial officer is that how is the current economic uncertainty will impact us? So as you can see, housing market is the key factors that will impact our property tax revenue. Our real property transfer tax also relate to our housing market. So that brings us to the next slide, which is not all the economic data affect us the same way. So let's focus on the one that affect us the most. What is going to impact the city's next year tax revenue or general fund revenue as a whole? Housing market is one of the core index that we should look at. And because it impacts our two of the top three tax revenue. And the labor market is also important because it linked to how stable people's jobs are and whether they can afford to continue to invest in a home and continue to pay mortgage. And that linked to how stable the housing market will be. Interest rate also hinder our housing market activities. High borrowing costs have cooled our market, and market activity is important for our real property transfer tax. And also, it's also a key factor for the main property tax growth year over year. Inflation is another key factor we need to keep an eye on because our expenditures are heavily affected by the high inflation in the last year and two. And if it continue to go up, it's going to hurt our bottom line. So let's take a look at the housing market. The chart in front of you shows our average median home price. And as you can see, this is a chart showing the trend since 2016. This trend shows us the housing price is going up. And even though the volume, the blue bar showing the activity have dropped quite significantly over the last 2-3 years, the price are not dropping. And it's relatively stable. Sometimes it dipped a little bit in 2023, but it have come back up. And we haven't seen any decline. And the demand is still there. As you look at the little orange bar at the bottom, that's how many days a house will be on the market. It's around 15 to 20 days. That means we still have a really high demand. Once we have inventory, home really in our areas, it sells really fast. So that gives us some certainties that our core revenue, which is property tax, sales tax, and real property transfer tax, they are standing on a solid ground. Even when outside is so uncertain, so many things is going on, our core revenue is still stable. Oh, I jumped too fast. So the job market is also important, as we mentioned. The nation unemployment rate is currently a little bit above 4%. Some projections think that it will likely go into the 5% area. California's unemployment rate has been higher than the national average at 5.4, but our county, San Mateo County and San Mateo City, is always outperforming the national average and California average. We are currently at 3.7, which is lower than 4%. That shows us our regional, local job market is stable. And Bay Area is still the hub for talents, especially for tech and innovation. So with that kind of background, we have a little bit comfort that the job market can be stable even during the storm we are facing right now. Sales tax is our number 2 tax revenue. I would like to say that sales tax has been flat for many years now. We would love to see sales tax go up faster, but in reality, it has been growing really slow and relatively flat. During the Great Recession, we have seen sales tax drop quite significantly in 2028, 29. 2008 and 2009, sorry about that. It took about 5 years to recover. And since then, we have passed Measure S to increase our sales tax, and which is a really good supplement in order for us to continue to provide the services and continue to fix our roads and do the important capital projects that we don't have funding for. Since then, Measure S has been stable and also relatively flat because it's also part of a sales tax. We have seen that it drops for 2 years during pandemic, but it rebounds in 2 years. So that shows us our sales tax actually have a strength inside it. It's diverse. We are not booming like some of the city where they have big retail hubs or they have a lot of auto dealers that when the economy is booming, they get other city with that kind of setup, they get a lot more sales tax than we do. But during the downtime, our tax basis is more diverse and can withstand the downturn better. We are more resilient in that way. So based on this backdrop, we are building our next year's general fund budget based on this assumption, which is expecting an economic slowdown. Inflation is likely going up and continue to drive costs up. And housing market is showing more resilience than 2028's Great Recession, because this time around, although all the uncertainties surround us, it's not a housing crisis. So we can still rely on housing market and it's still reliable. Job market is still reliable. Sales tax is, like we just talked about, is resilient because we are not heavily rely on some of the auto sales or big retail sales that are more vulnerable. With that, let's go into the general fund operating budget preview for next year. I like to put all the uncertainty and challenges in the bubble. So last year, when I came in front of council, we highlighted 2 main uncertainties. The VLF shortfall it's a threat to our financial sustainability. It's a long-term risk. Elevated interest rate hinder housing market, therefore slow down property tax growth and property transfer tax revenue as well. In this year's budget preview, I want to highlight our infrastructure needs because we would like to say this needs is never going away. In fact, we have so many facility and infrastructure. Just to upkeep those infrastructure and facility has been a balancing act every single year. If we have to add additional projects to improve or modernize our aging facilities, we currently don't have the capacity to do it all. So I just want to highlight this need as one of the focuses because that has been one of the area council have set priority on. Rising pension costs, I highlight this one specifically because of the stock market and the volatility that we have seen that potentially can impact CalPERS performance. If they miss their target for this year, it's going to impact our unfunded pension liability, and accordingly, it's going to affect our long-term financial commitment to pay off the pension debt. So that means it's not going to impact next year, but once we have another layer of unfunded pension, that means we have to pay more in the future years. With years to come, we have to keep paying. That's a constant issues that we have to battle with. So on top of that, we have the economic uncertainties around us. That's how we build our 25-26 budget. With that, we are setting our budget assumption for property tax with 4% growth. And VLF shortfall, we are currently advocating for the state to backfill our 2023-24 shortfall. The city's portion is $6.6 million. We are building in only half of that in the next year budget. The reason why is that it was a struggle every single year, but last year we budgeted 100%, assuming we'll get the whole thing. But with federal funding cutting and also all this uncertainty that the state have to also navigate, we are not quite clear whether we can get 100% or not. So to be conservative, we want to only build in half of it. So if it come in at like 100%, that's great. But if it doesn't come in or there's a further delay, we are budgeted for it. Sales tax is going to stay flat. We are not budgeting sales tax to drop, but we are expecting consumer is going to reduce their discretionary spending. That will partially being offset by inflation. So we hope that it will come in, stay flat. That will be a good scenario. Real property transfer tax, nobody know because it's really related to market. I always mention to my team that this is the most difficult element to forecast because we don't know where the market will go. But as disciplined as we can, we would like to budget this top three revenue, property transfer tax at the baseline, which is $8 million, and added $0.6 million for Measure CC. So sales tax is also budgeted in our $8 million baseline with TOT at $4 million. Combine all of that, I expanded our general fund revenue summary table this year to be more transparent what is building into the general fund revenue. Usually I condense all of the revenue into main category, but for transparency, staff is preparing this more extended summary for council to review. Overall, we are looking at 2025-26 with a total general fund revenue at 172.4, which is a $1.5 million less compared to the mid-year budget review that we provided council in February. So this is a conservative estimate, as I mentioned earlier. If we perform better, especially BLF come in, make us whole, the state backfill the entire VRF shortfall, then our total general fund revenue will go up by 3.3 million, which will bring us to 175.7 instead of what I highlighted here. So hopefully we'll get all the money, but if not, this is budgeted at half of the VLF shortfall. General fund expenditure is consists of primary personnel costs, which accounted for about 70% of our general fund expenditure if we accounted SMC Fire's personnel share into the personnel costs. So this is the biggest piece in our general fund budget expenditure is people. Our salary and wages are calculated and projected based on our latest labor contracts, and benefit is budgeted based on the best we know where healthcare costs and pension costs will be next year. Non-personnel costs usually include supplies, services, operating and maintenance costs. We are assuming it's going to be aligned with CPI, which is about 3 to 5% increases. One of the big increases this year is insurance premium. It's projecting to go up about $1 million, which is about 23% increase. This is not news to staff. This insurance premium increases has been going on for a couple of years now. So it's something that we have been monitoring and And it's one of the reasons why non-personnel operating costs go up next year. Transfer is projecting a total $11.2 million. Most of the transfer out, including general funds contribution to CIP. $3 million is our debt service obligation, and $410,000 is our set aside for equipment and replacement fund. We set aside that fund for building maintenance. Actually, this is the first time we are going to use that set aside for our CIP this year. Maybe in the next presentation, you'll hear about that. So combine all of that, our general fund expenditure for next year is projecting at $187.6 million. Combine our revenue projection and expenditure projection, we are looking at a $15.2 million deficit for next year. Again, our budget is a legal authority, which is the maximum spending level that we set for the city to operate under. And as we show in the past, we always spend under that limit, meaning when we finish the year, we always come back with a dollar that is lower than the budget projection at the beginning. So with $15.2 million deficit, how is that going to affect our general fund balance? Here we show a table how our general fund balance is estimated to draw down. We just finished a general fund reserve policy, which we break the general fund into different tiers, and we are estimate the beginning balance for next year. We are going to close this year with close to $112 million. And then after we draw down because of deficit, we are going to end the next fiscal year with a little bit close to $70 million. I would say that because our actual operating results usually are better than the budget deficit. So my estimate will be general fund balance. It's likely going to be between $70 to $75 million when we finish next year. This is the new layout of our general fund reserve, including everything, even the unassigned fund balance. So the top part is the beginning fund balance. If we break it into two different buckets as we outline under the new structure, which is 15% of general fund revenue as our contingency reserve. The housing set aside is for affordable housing initiative, and CIP carryover is for the CIP budget not spent, and budget stabilization reserve is 15% of our general fund revenue, and $10 million pension stabilization. So as you can see, we have to draw down on the budget stabilization reserve because of the deficit. And again, if we finish the year with less than $15 million deficit, and the chances are very likely we are going to spend less than that, our budget stabilization reserve will be coming in with a dollar that higher than what I show in the chart right now. As part of the council priority, we also would like to ask council to consider a $500,000 general fund unassigned fund balance to set up a community's budget, which is something that we never done before. But if council can give staff direction, whether it's something that council would like to move forward, we could build this as a committed fund balance in the general fund. So we commit the money for staff to continue to build a process to develop a community budget for future years.
So this is just the Measure CC item that we were looking at doing a community-based budgeting. And that was part of it's in your blue sky items as well as one of the initiatives. So what we're looking at is taking 500,000 from Measure CC, setting that aside for a future community budgeting process.
To address our deficit issues, staff have been developing a financial sustainability plan. Our initial phase include the following action that we have taken to address our budget deficit issues. One is actively pursue our grant funding opportunity. The city have engaged a citywide grant writing consultants to help the city to engage with this effort. We also completed the general fund reserve policy to identify funding that we can mobilize to invest into CIP and infrastructure needs. Cost recovery effort is also part of the financial sustainability plan. Actually, it's Parks and Rec Department just finished their cost recovery study and updated their fee schedule to have a better cost recovery for the city. So this just completed, and the new fee schedule is just got adopted by council in the last council meeting, and it will become effective in the next fiscal year. Another cost recovery enhancement effort is to monitor our CIP staff time chargeback. This is a part of a mechanism that we use to recover costs for the general fund. The general fund is the default go-to for our CIP engineering staff. So their staff compensation and personnel costs are all 100% budgeted under general fund first, and then get charged out to CIP capital project as staff work on certain project, code their time into the project, and their compensation and benefit will get charged to the capital project fund instead of the general fund. So we noticed this area we can enhance on that area and bring back more cost recovery for the general fund. So general fund doesn't have to take the whole burden for that staff time. With that, we will be able to, we hope we will be able to reduce the general fund's burden by $1 million a year. Also, staff have been looking into all the set-aside funds for idle resources, and we have identified excess reserve in our workers' comp fund. The reason why we have excess reserve in the workers' comp fund is that every single year we set aside money into the workers' comp fund. It's a self-insured program. And if the claims come in lower than the set-aside, then we accumulate a reserve year over year in the fund. So because of staff have improved past claims, it's coming in lower for a couple years now. We have built up excess reserve that allow us to strategically lower future reserve, at least for the next 3 years, to effectively lower general funds burden by about $1.5 million a year for the next 3 years. So it's kind of a budget stabilization tool that we deploy to stabilize the budget in the mix of all this. But I want to highlight that's also limited reserve that we can only use for that long, meaning it's temporary. It can provide some temporary relief that we can breathe now, that we have a little cushion there, but it's not a long-term solution. And also, staff have been developing economic development action plan. It's under development. It's going to come back and bring it back to council in late spring and fall. In the summer, right, Alex? Lastly, we also are working on the contingency plan if condition and other situation around us get worse. We have a plan to deploy that we can act on certain cost savings measures to reduce the city's spending. And in order to fund our services at the current level and also continue to contribute into CIP, we have to, as a city, have to explore revenue measure option in 2026. I think one of the reasons is that if general fund only operate to maintain and provide services and don't have to worry about infrastructures, I think general fund will be fine. But if we have to do both, we just don't have the funding to cover it all. And that create a long-term issue. Just like any leaders in the organization, you have to think about where the organization will be in 10, 20 years, and where the council want the city to look like in 10, 20 years. And in order to continue to provide the services and also build our facility to the level that our community deserve, that means we have to think about how do we get there. And looking into 2026 revenue measure may provide us that extra funding to commit to our facility and also support the services that we need to continue to provide to the public. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I am here to answer any question. I would love to hear council's feedback. Any feedback from the council, we'll bring it back to the team and try to make changes and incorporate it into the budget before we bring it back again in June.
Thank you, Karen. Great presentation. Before we take questions and comments from the council, is there any public comment?
Certainly, Mayor Newsom. We have no request to speak in chamber. I do have one hand raised in our virtual environment. If you wish to speak on this item and you have not raised your hand, please do so now. Mayor Newsom, we have one request to speak, and we'll set the timer at 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Invite Mason Fong. Mason, please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Yeah, good evening, Council. Mason speaking as myself, as an individual and resident, lifelong resident of San Mateo. Great presentation. I think the city has the right strategy to balance current needs. As you all know, San Mateo has a unique circumstance, along with every city in the county and Napa County, of this inherent structural deficit due to a vehicle license fee reform issue that probably won't be solved realistically, at least in the near future. Thus, I've sent an email late around 4 o'clock that has 6 example policies that you could really explore to really solve this structural problem. Every government agency in America really does this exact same strategy. They move around money to a reserve. The reserve gets a certain amount of interest, but doesn't keep up with CPI of government costs, like construction of raw materials for public works projects, et cetera. And so you really have to innovate on how do we make money as a city and how do we save money as a city. An example of making money, the city has a gem that most other cities don't have. You have a wastewater treatment facility. You could go negotiate a water deal with Cal Water to sell your excess water to them to produce revenue. That could then supplement that missing funding for all those water improvements in Shoreview. There are a million different strategies. I've listed 6 of them. The first of which is the 25% reserve policy makes no sense. That handcuffs every department every time they produce their budget in October to the city manager to then review. So Sunnyvale has a 15%, and we have a great budget in that city. You have $700 million in reserves doing almost nothing that could be put towards those capital projects that the finance director prioritized. And so you should understand, hey, if we don't renovate the 3rd Ave garage right now, how much does that cost us 10 years from now? What is the capital inflation of that by not putting that money in now? And there's a million different projects, whether it's deferred maintenance on roads or street line enhancements, whatever. You should look at a ballot measure to expand and the horizon of your budget timeline. You have a 2 or 5 year budget. I'm not exactly sure, but you could look at a 10-year budget. The advantage to a 10-year budget, which Sunnyvale has had for a very long time, is that it makes every decision more fiscally conservative of saying, hey, how are we going to pay for this in 10 years? As well as it gives flexibility to your finance director to run a deficit for 9 years and balance on the 10th. That's a ballot measure I think worth exploring. There's a bunch of different other things. Really, I would prioritize city work by what produces revenue, because you have this unique situation. If you can't fix the budget, you can't fix all of the other problems like housing, environment, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. We will now close public comment and go to questions, comments, and feedbacks from the council. Does any council member want to go first? Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Thank you, Director. That was an exhausting presentation for you to put together, you and the team, but really, really helpful. And I think we're going to be really, I guess my major comment is we need to be looking at this much more regularly, given the incredible volatility. So I'm sure you've been working with your team and the city manager and other folks to think, what should the new review criteria be? Because doing it every 6 months maybe isn't appropriate in these times. So that's one thought. Number two, in terms of CalPERS, I think I am not a finance director, but I could pretty well guess we're not going to hit the CalPERS target this year. So what discussions are going on with CalPERS? What is CalPERS trying to do to address that? And what can we do other than just take down our revenue or take up our cost assumptions?
CalPERS' approach in terms of handling their investment performance is that they know they will not come in exactly at the long-term target every year. It will be, sometimes it will be higher, sometimes it will be lower. The approach that they took in the last couple of years and the policy they set is every time when we have a new unfunded pension layer that added on top of what we have, it will get ramped in over 5 years, which is they don't hit you right at the next year. They slowly ease it in over 5 years, and then you go into the full blown. The reason I talked to our actuary officers at CalPERS, the rationale behind that is that CalPERS wanted to give a little runway for themselves. If this year we miss, next year we outperform, then you will offset that kind of impact eventually. So the city don't have to have the jumping up and down different type of annual contribution. They kind of semi-smooth it out for you. So the impact will be at least minimized to a level that you can kind of have some sort of predictability in your projection. Other than every year it's jumping up and down, have no certainty whatsoever. They use that mechanisms to smooth out any impact. So there's no good solution provided by CalPERS on that end. They were in cash flow crisis a couple of years ago. That's why there's a lot of new policy roll out over the last few years, and they have stopped changing those amortization policy or whatnot. It somehow stabilized now. Discount rate have got reduced a couple of times. Now it also stabilized to 6.8%, which compared to 7.5 6-7 years ago, that's quite a decrease. But they have no new proposal to further lower that discount rate from 6.8 to anywhere lower. So to tackle the pension issues, we have basically two options. One is if we have discretionary surplus or one-time money, we could make a one-time discretionary contribution to pay down our pension liability. Therefore, it may lower our pension costs in the long term. But the other approach is that we can take the cash flow approach, which is we manage our internal resources and make sure that we have the flexibility to absorb any increases from CalPERS, and we'll have enough to meet the cash flow requirement. That's exactly why we set up the pension stabilization reserve, put the $10 million there. That one is actually to address cash flow issues. So we are taking that approach. In the past, I remember the city of San Mateo have make discretionary pension payment, one-time payment when we have a little surplus. So we could go with a pension strategy that we do both. But currently, as we are going through budget deficit, I don't see that we have the extra money to make that kind of discretionary contribution right now. So I think we are back to the strategy number 2, which is maintain our cash flow, make sure we have enough. And that's where we are with our pension cost management.
Okay. To be continued.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Couple of specifics. Number 1, are we projecting sales tax to go down while Hillsdale Mall is being redeveloped? And how are we thinking about that? And then 3, number 2, golf fees, it looks like we're going up slightly, basically flat, but we've got some substantial issues out at the golf course. And how are we thinking about that? And then number 2, the TOT is flat. And I'm assuming that is assuming no Marriott in all the assumptions.
Yes, the TOT, we already exclude the Marriott portion out of it. So without that, it's going to stay at around $4 million a year. With travel, I heard that we might have less travelers, so TOT might get a hit. But because the portion is so small, even though it go down, it won't affect us as much. Hillsdale Mall redevelopment is going to take a long time, but if it does go away, it will definitely impact our sales tax, but our property tax will go up. So in a way, it may offset some of the impact.
As part of the development, we'll go ahead and figure out exactly what the numbers look like and what the projections look like so that we can go ahead and budget accordingly.
Yeah.
Once we move forward with the future development over there. I want to just quickly do a time check because I know we have CIP as well. What were your other, real quickly, just covering your other questions?
The only thing I wanted to say is I think we need a criteria.
Golf.
Oh, the golf. Yeah. That's
We have accounted for the closure of the restaurant, so
Okay.
adjusted that.
right. And I
But the
think,
golf green fees are still doing very strong and doing well. So it hasn't been impacted.
thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Just a question to either Karen or city manager. What is the definition of a community budget? Is that participatory budgeting?
It's somewhat very close to that, exactly. So we'll do some community engagement and we'll hear from the community where they want to prioritize that $500,000. It could be in a plethora of different initiatives in itself. Something that the council committed to, I believe, back in 2023. Something they want to look at. So we'll finally get around to that if the council still wants to do that with that $500,000.
Okay. Anybody else? Council Deputy Mayor.
Hopefully a quick question, just to really throw this out there. We don't need to go totally through it right now, but I saw your note about Director Huang about insurance increases, and just curious if we, are considering anything we can do to potentially offset or maybe even reduce that. At Rethink Waste, where I'm on a board, they've recently invested in safety equipment policies and procedures and saw a reduced rate in their latest contract. So
it's something that I think that we can take back. The city attorney oversees our insurance for the city. Of course, you could always look at higher deductibles as well if you want to look at the overall cost of this. But we're looking at just year over year. I think it's been a $1.7 million swing just in the last 2 years of our insurance costs. So it's been significant, but something that I can go ahead and connect with the city attorney on looking into that further.
thank you.
Councilmember Sawyer-Cookity.
Thank you. Great presentation, Karen. I would just say, and this is more for the community, I echo a lot of the comments that you made today. And we really need to ask ourselves, the tough questions on what we're going to take on versus expecting the state and particularly the federal government to provide funding in the same manner we've come to expect over the last few decades. So that's really my only comment. I can, look forward to continuing the dialogue around 2026 and what we think we need to do. But just, I echo a lot of the challenges that you've mentioned, and I know it's not unique to San Mateo, but every city. So thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're going to swing back over this way. No, go ahead, and then I'll close up.
So I'm a little uneasy with $500,000 for community budgeting and given our deficit right now. Is there a way to pause that while we figure out what is going on? This is not the time to implement new budgeting strategies.
We can pull it off the table. It's at the council's pleasure.
Yes, sir.
So I would just submit that this is related to Measure CC and the passage of Measure CC. And in the campaign for Measure CC, it was indicated that the community would get some opportunity, I believe, to participate in some of where some of this money goes. This is a small portion of what we've received from Measure CC last year. So I think I would be in support of keeping this. I feel like staff has made an effort to not allocate a large amount of what we've received from Measure CC for the reasons that I think Councilmember Fernandez is suggesting. So for that reason, I would support going ahead with this.
If I may, I'd like to continue a dialogue on this one, if we can. So.
Sure. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I guess I would say let's continue to look, not to take it off, but given where we are, we didn't know we'd be in the budget situation we are now. So that would be where I'd come out.
So on that, I think I'd like to see more information as well. Specifically, like the Measure CC, what's that revenue income look like? So we could figure out, okay, do we need to scale it back a little or put a pause on it? So that's where I am on that. The nice thing about going last is I'm like, okay, that was asked, this was asked.
While you're still looking for your notes, may I just say if staff will come back with a recommendation on community budgeting, I'd like to see something in the 5 digits.
I'm seeing 2 nodding heads.
I don't think I'm ready to commit. I'd rather have it come back and then we can decide.
We'll bring something in June. That's fine.
Okay. Loss of TOT. Have we been exploring or working with Airbnb and VRBOs to find out if there's unfound revenue there?
So we do have an agreement with HDL Companies who does really aggressively go after the listings. And so they do that enforcement for us. So we are taking that approach.
So it'd be neat to know next time, just or some point, report back what percentage of TOT comes in from that revenue stream.
Follow up.
That's it. I mean, I think everything else has been covered. Thank you very much for a great presentation. Do you have
Thank
all you
you.
need from us?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along. Our next item is the 2025-2030 Capital Improvement Program Plan Review. We're going to have a presentation from Matt Fabry, Public Works Director, Joanne Magrini, Park and Rec Director. Welcome. Thanks again, Karen. Good work.
And you're going to go to this one. Here. And then there is the green one. And then screen 2.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Happy to be here with Joanne Magrini, Parks and Rec Director. We'll try to go through this quickly. I know we're running short on time. So we're here to give a preview of the 2025 to 30 capital improvement plan. So I just want to highlight a few things of what this is and what it isn't. One is that when we look at the 5-year CIP plan, what the council's really taking action on with the budget adoption in June is the year one. So we'd be focused on, really balanced, detailed set of projects for 25, 26. And then we provide a plan of what it looks like for the other years, but council does not adopt those with their budget adoption. So as we get further into the 5 years, obviously things get less certain as we get further out in terms of what the projects will be, what the costs will be, and what the revenues are going to be. But we do try to provide a 5-year plan each year as we go through this. So in your packet, there was a list of attachment 1 was all of the projects that are proposed for the 5-year plan, and then attachment 2 is the unfunded list of projects. And so we'll talk about each of those as well. And I just want to also highlight that as we go through this, we're going to talk about all the projects that are requesting funds over the next 5 years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's all the projects, because we do have some projects that already are budgeted that are going to be going forward. So you may see things happening next year that aren't on this list, and it's because they've already got budget allocated and aren't asking for any additional money. An example of that would be we have an existing City Hall improvements project that has already been budgeted, and we're looking at trying to make improvements to the seating and the carpeting out here. So that's something that would be happening where we aren't asking for money. So I just want to highlight that there's sort of those different aspects to it. So just going into what we're going to cover quickly, we're going to go through the different projects by type. We're going to focus in on our different revenue streams, which include looking closely at general fund and Measure S, our Parks and Rec fees, and our special revenue funds and our enterprise funds. And then we'll talk at the end about the unfunded projects. So just looking at the overall 5-year picture, this is what we have in terms of all 5 years. We're looking at a total plan of $267+ million, with 57% of that being things on the sewer side. And that's primarily tied to work that we're doing to finish out the clean water program. But then the next biggest would be our streets and transportation, where we're doing all of the investments that we do annually in terms of maintaining our roadways. Buildings and facilities comes in after that, and then parks and recreation slightly below that. And then we've got miscellaneous and stormwater and bridges that we'll talk about. So that's sort of the overview of the 5-year look at things. And then this is breaking it down by project type for those 5 years. So it's the same dollar amounts that I just talked about, but this is just showing by year in those different categories. So I won't spend too much time on that. And then just wanted to highlight a couple of projects that are big projects over in 25, 26 that are going to be going forward. One is the Marina Library structural improvements, where we're going to be shutting down the Marina Library for a year plus to make significant improvements to deal with, the settling of that facility. But we're going to also make roof and heating and ventilation and all kinds of other improvements. So we'll generally end up with a new library branch there at the end of that. We are continuing our citywide street rehabilitation program, which includes making final steps on completing the Smooth Streets program. And then we're going to be making improvements at the Joinville pool that we talked about with the council a few months back in terms of some of the challenges that we have at our pools at King and Joinville. So now focusing in on the stuff that Karen talked about in terms of our general fund and Measure S revenues that we consider sort of our pots of money that can go towards any type of project. And then we lump Measure CC in with that as well as another general fund type of revenue. Typically, we get an allocation from the general fund of $4.25 million a year that goes towards capital projects. Measure S provides a contribution as well. That ranges, as you can see in the second row there, between 2.6 million and 25, 26, down to 2.1 million and 2.2 million. And that's really tied to Karen's projections of where sales tax is coming in. So we get more when sales tax is higher and potentially less as sales tax comes down. And then you'll see that we've got a Measure CC contribution proposed for 25, 26. And that's tied to sort of our need to make a balanced set of projects that come from these funding sources. So you can see in the bottom rows under the project types, we've got two different rows. One is for funded projects. So these are projects that are already funded and they're asking for additional money. And then we've got new projects that have not previously received any funding. And so we've got just under 6 million of new project requests for 25, 26 and 2.5 million of new projects. And so even with the two contributions from general fund and Measure S, as well as the Measure CC, we've got a little bit more than we have revenue for 25, 26. But we are able to balance that out by pulling from the general fund CIP balance in terms of money that's been released from projects that had additional money in the budget that they didn't need that gets released back to the general fund. So we're able to balance for 25, 26. You can see for the extra years other than year 5, we're generally balanced or a little bit under in terms of the available revenue. And those numbers, obviously, every year as we go through this, will get further refined. And generally, we come up with something that is balanced for the year that the council is adopting. I should say that these numbers are all shown in thousands. So these are, $4.25 million. So hopefully that's clear. And just highlighting some of the projects that are going to be primarily funded from General Fund, Measure S and Measure CC. So what you're seeing now is 5-year project totals. So for these different projects, this is showing the 5-year, I got really loud all of a sudden, the 5-year amounts of money that are going towards this. And some of these projects get some money that comes from funds other than General Fund, Measure S and CC, but these are projects that are primarily funded by these sources. And so we're going to be doing some work to, we have a citywide, play court resurfacing project that goes around and upgrades facility play courts. Same thing, we've lumped all of our roof replacements into a citywide roof improvements category. And so we go in order of the highest priority improvements for our roofs for our city facilities. We are continuing to make the final progress on converting our high voltage streetlight circuits to low voltage. We're proposing to fund the local roadway safety plan improvements that are recommended for the Peninsula Delaware intersection. We will continue on with making improvements that were identified in the neighborhood traffic action plans through our neighborhood traffic management program. And we will be making investments in addressing sidewalk issues citywide through our Citywalk Sidewalk Repair Program. Public Works manages citywide playground equipment replacement. So this is when things break at our playgrounds. And so we're fixing things or replacing pieces of equipment that have broken. Joanne will talk about a Parks one that is more focused on holistic upgrades of citywide playgrounds. But we have a standing item where we invest money every year in fixing our playground equipment. We have money going towards replacement of the synthetic turf fields at the Los Prados playing fields. And then we've got a project that will be making some upgrades in the PD's dispatch facility that are needed. So moving on, now we'll talk about special revenue funds. So these are revenue funds that we get that are focused on a particular activity. And so these are our transportation funds. And so we get transportation funds from a variety of sources. We have historical gas tax that brings in about 1.3 million a year. I'll jump down to the bottom, which is the RMRA, is the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account. So that was when SB1 a number of years ago increased gas taxes. So we get about 2.7 million from that. Measure A and Measure W are both countywide sales tax measures, and we get a chunk of money based on our population from those sources. And then Measure M is the countywide vehicle license fee that increases vehicle license fees. So we get a piece of that money. So cumulatively, our special revenue is about 8.7 million that's available to us each year. And this is focused on transportation projects. So looking at the types of projects that we're going to be funding over the 5 years from those funds, you can see that the vast majority of that money goes towards the streets category, which is really the money that we're investing in maintaining our roadway conditions. So this includes money that goes towards finishing the Smooth Streets program. That's also, we talked about Measure S, but it's also just our annual pavement maintenance activities where we're doing grind and pave or slurry seals and things like that. So it uses up the vast majority of that money. So it leaves us, not a lot to do things like traffic calming and bicycle and pedestrian projects. And that's one of the challenges that we're wrestling with. And we're going to have additional analysis about how we can balance, the need to maintain our roadway pavement condition as well as the need to implement some of these other multimodal improvements. So just highlighting some of those projects, over the 5 years, again, we'll be investing about $42 million in maintaining our roadway pavement condition. We will be putting money towards our local roadway safety plan. This is the city's contribution. And I will say that we also are recipients of we recently received $1 million housing incentive grant that will go towards implementing some of the top priority projects in our local roadway safety plan. And then we've got money every year going into our citywide Safe Routes to School program. And now I think I'll turn it over to Joanne.
Thanks, Matt. So parks and recreation fees are applied to residential development, and they include both park in lieu fees, which refers to the fees in lieu of land dedication, and park impact fees, which refers to fees for residential units that are not subject to the in lieu fees. For fiscal year 25-26, we're expecting to collect $4.5 million from projects that are currently in the building permit process. And for the out years, we have taken an average of the past 7 years, and we're projecting $2.7 million for each year. And this will allow us to adjust funds as they are collected for projects, and staff review these projects on a quarterly basis. As you can see in fiscal year 27-28, there is a deficit, and that is due to the large number of projects that we're anticipating needing funding to accomplish, including citywide park playground upgrades like Laurelwood Park Playground, improvements to the bunkers and irrigation controllers out at the golf course, and a potential new downtown dog park. Citywide park playground, park play area upgrade. Majority of these funds are being set aside for future playground renovations. Parks that are anticipated to be addressed after Parkside Aquatic and Laurelwood are Washington and Trenta parks. And based on the future assessment, there may be other sites identified that need to be prioritized. Current funding for the East Hillsdale Park project will break ground later this summer, comes out of this account. Laurelwood Park Playground, we did a stopgap measure, maintenance to further the life of these playground structures. It's a wooden structure that was installed in 2011. Repair work to this playground should be completed next month to extend its useful life by 2 years. And then, of course, Central Park Playground, as you are aware, we will be breaking ground on this much anticipated playground renovation this Thursday. And these funds have been added to the project for construction management services, which will be necessary in order to allow staff to focus on delivering other projects. We have Parkside Aquatic Park, a total of $1 million to replace all the equipment and make adjustment to the surfaces out there. These play structures were installed in 2005 and 2008 and have also exceeded their useful life. We have a Ryder Park water feature, and due to water usage restrictions and recirculation requirements, the splash pad has not been used. So staff intend to investigate renovation or replacement of this park feature. And then we have Japanese garden repairs. About half of these funds will be used for the fence, with the remaining to refurbish the north pond and the roof of the tea house. This project is intended to start after the playground renovation to decrease impact and disruption to the park. Some of the projects we're working on this year include pour in place rubber resurfacing repairs and replacements at parks throughout the city, as well as the replacement of a piece of sand play equipment at Sunny Bray Park and Shoreview Skate Park repairs.
All right, thanks, Joanne. Back to me, and we'll talk now about enterprise funds. And when we're talking about capital projects with enterprise funds, we're primarily talking about our sewer funds and our storm funds. So as we mentioned, the vast majority of the money that gets invested in capital projects comes from our sewer enterprise fund, and most of that is going towards the Clean Water Program. The Clean Water Program will be wrapping up at the end of calendar year 2027, but then we will be moving into what we call the post-Clean Water period, where we will be continuing to make investments at the wastewater treatment plant in terms of needed improvements on the old side of the plant that will still be in operation for solids processing, as well as all of the ongoing rehabilitation work that we do in our collection system and our pump stations. With our storm fund, you can see that we aren't budgeting a lot in the outer years, even though we got the community flood and storm protection fee approved. And that's really because we're waiting on completing our update to the storm drain master plan, which is underway right now, and we should have done by the end of this calendar year. That will give us a much clearer picture of the needs within our storm drain system and give us a prioritized capital improvement program that we will then build into next year and beyond's program. And so just some of the things that we are working on, we do have requirements in our regional stormwater permit that we have to implement a certain amount of green stormwater infrastructure. And so we're implementing efforts to advance the necessary amounts of green infrastructure we have to do. We are working on our spot dredging efforts at the Marina Lagoon, as well as moving towards starting the process of getting going on doing environmental design and permitting in terms of a larger scale dredging effort, and then making advancements, as I said, in terms of our storm drain master plan update that's doing comprehensive analysis of our structures and our creeks and channels and what we need to do with our pump stations and all of that. On the sewer side of things, we've got our upcoming East San Mateo sewer lift stations project that's going to be making upgrades to multiple sewer lift stations on the east side of town. We've got our what we call our annual maintenance projects at the wastewater treatment plant that is looking at sort of the ongoing maintenance and activities that we have to do to maintain the old part of the plant. So again, these are 5-year numbers. And then the numbers are the amount of money that will be going forward in finishing our wastewater treatment plant upgrade and expansion project. So now we move on to the unfunded projects. And this is again looking at our total needs. So this is not really looking at a 5-year period, but this is all the projects that have been identified that staff has identified that need to be done. And we've put some level of cost estimate to these. And, you know, the needs are significant. You can see we've got $350+ million of unfunded projects. And you can see the different categories with the highest percentage of those being in our buildings and facilities. As we've talked about with council in the past, all of the needs that we have on our aging infrastructure, parks and recreation facilities, as well as a lot of the transportation projects, including our bike and ped projects. We do have things in here from our old storm drain master plan in terms of improvements for our storm drainage system. So we do have numbers in there that are tied to those old things, but we expect those numbers to go up, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So this number will go up as the 5-year capital improvement program goes forward. Some of the projects that we wanted to highlight that are on this include phases 2 through 4 for Joanne's side in terms of upgrades to Central Park as part of the master plan, the Ultimate King Resiliency Center, looking at $20 million there for a project like that. We know that we've got problems with the tennis court, Central Park parking garage in terms of structural problems there that ultimately we're going to need something new there. We've also got issues, as we talked about with council, at the Second and El Camino parking garage. We know we've got needs for a new fire station 27. We know that we've got a very old and aging courtyard that needs to be updated. Numbers 26 million. We know we're $9.5 million short on the 10192 multimodal, the Fashion Island Class 4 bike lane project. We've got 31 projects listed on the unfunded list that are really the low and medium low bike master plan projects that are over 13 million. And Councilmember Lorraine brought an issue to our attention today that that number probably needs to be escalated by another, 25+ million that covers our medium, high, and high projects that we try to build into our Bike San Mateo project that's on the funded list. But we definitely don't have all the money for the medium, high, and high. And so I think we'll have to work on updating this to account for those as well. And then, as I mentioned, we've got these old storm drain needs in terms of the old storm drain master plan, and those are going to change as we finish up the master plan. So I did want to talk about some of the planning efforts that we're doing that will affect the future CIP needs in the unfunded list. One is we're finishing up a citywide bridge assessment that is looking at all the citywide bridges. I think our dollar amount in there is about 20 million that we estimate potentially in terms of citywide bridge needs. The good news on that is that there are grant sources that can go towards those kind of improvements. We're finishing up our comprehensive facilities condition assessment, and I think the preliminary numbers we have for the needs on the facilities side is well over $100 million. So that's on top of what we've already talked about in the unfunded list. The parks folks are going to be implementing ultimately a parks amenities and condition assessment where they would do the same sort of analysis at the parks facilities that would go look at the things beyond the physical facilities that there's, the buildings and whatnot that Public Works is looking at. So they're going to identify potentially additional needs that are going to come in terms of the parks amenities. As I mentioned, we've got the storm drain master plan that is going to identify likely tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of storm drain infrastructure needs. I added on here, I don't think I included in the agenda report, but we are going to be working on the sea level rise adaptation plan. And so that's undoubtedly going to identify additional needs on shoreline resiliency and protecting us from rising tides. And then with the closing out of the Clean Water Program, we are going to be going forward and doing a new flow study and hydraulic model update so that we can capture all the projects that have been done under the Clean Water Program and determine whether or not there are additional capacity improvements that are needed or additional flow improvements that are needed. And that's a way to sort of validate all the projects that we've done. As we went into that, a lot of that was modeled to begin with. And so we want to go back and revisit that with all the projects that have been done. And then it's been, I think, close to 10 years since we've done our pump station and force main condition assessment. A force main is the pressurized pipeline that comes out of a sewer pump station. And so we need to revisit that assessment in terms of where our sewer pump stations and the force mains are at. And then council, I think, is already aware that we're in the middle of working on a treatment plant biogas and biosolids evaluation that's looking at how can we better utilize the biogas that we generate. Can we use that as a revenue generator in terms of generating electricity or offsetting our operational costs, as well as what can we do more effectively with the biosolids that we produce. But that will also identify needs at the old part of the treatment plant in terms of our solids processing facilities, especially if we want to move forward with implementing some sort of energy generation facilities and whatnot. So these are all things that are going to add to our needs in terms of capital projects. So it's ending a little bit on a bad note, but it's also highlighting, I think, that we are doing a comprehensive effort to identify all of our issues so that we can have everything on the plate for council and the public as we go forward. And so I think with that, that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before we go to council comment, do we have any requests for public comment on this matter?
No requests on this item in chambers. I do have one hand raised in our virtual environment. If you wish to speak on this item and you have not raised your hand, please do so now. Mayor Newsom, that is one request to speak, and I will ask Mason Fong to please unmute your mic.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I know you guys are running low on time. 3 recommendations. One, these projects are prioritized by available funding and mandated requirements, which is great, but you should also prioritize them by deferred maintenance cost over time and ability to actually generate revenue for the city. I think you would have a very different list and a priority order in the construction timeline for these projects if you calculated it that way. You could look at Purple Pipe in order to reduce your water infrastructure costs, to supplement the Central Park master plan renovation, things like that. The second is use tax recapture. Now that you've passed your general plan, you're going to have a lot of planning applications that are going to come through. You're going to adopt them. You're going to build those projects. And how the sales tax of those construction materials works is the county takes half of that. And so over $1 million or some number, you can actually make it a conditional use to reallocate those sales tax funds from the county directly to you, which could generate, probably $20 million over the next 5 years at least. The last recommendation is you might do a thought experiment. Hey, the previous presentation told us we should use some of our reserves to pay off some of these unfunded projects. What is the cost savings of that if we gave you 10% of our reserves in $70 million, and what would you spend it on? That's a question I might ask as a council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. We'll close public comment and open it up for the council. Does anyone want to go first? Yes. Okay. Deputy Mayor Lorraine.
I think I can start just going in and out and saying I don't necessarily have questions at this time in the interest of time, but I thank Director Fabry and McGreeny for their presentation and a comprehensive look. It is a little tough to hear about potential uncertainty, deficits, and then see how much we know we want to do in the future. And yet what gets measured gets managed. And so I think, from here we can move forward together. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
I would just like to echo Deputy Mayor Lorraine's comments that doing this effort is so important. From our awareness perspective, the public's awareness perspective. So thank you to everybody on your teams who were involved in that, because we have a baseline now, which is great.
I just have one. I feel like this is not working today, but I just have one question, and that was, do we feel as though now that we've done a deep dive into our CIP that we've actually identified more cost? And is that is better? Thank you. And that's contributing to why we've seen an uplift in what our deficit is going to be next year. And that might be a Karen question. But
Our contribution from the general fund remain the same at 4.25 with supplement of Measure S and Measure CC funding. It's always not enough. Just as I mentioned to council, just upkeep all the facility the city have that was built in the 50s. And now we have to maintain it at a much higher cost. It has been always a challenge. And not to mention that we have to actually rebuild and modernize some of the facility. That's just additional capital needs that we wanted to do, but the funding is an issue.
okay, thank you.
I'll just add that, our construction costs keep going up. And so when our contributions stay flat, we're able to do fewer projects as a result.
Absolutely. And material costs too. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
If I may, through the mayor, I just want to recognize 3 key people that were very integral in putting this together. Jamie Perez, who is the business manager for Public Works sitting behind me, Suzette Silverman, who is in the audience, who is a business manager for Parks and Rec, and also our budget manager, Renee Helcon in finance. It's a collaboration across departments. It's a big feat. So just appreciate their work.
Thank you for acknowledging all the teams and great work, everybody. Thank you. Okay, and that's it. We are going to close